Hey everybody, welcome back to Stories with Bree. I am super excited. We have Ashley here again from Melanated Pages, where she's here with me to discuss a book that we buddy read, which was something that I had never done before, and it was really exciting. But yeah, I'm so happy that you decided to come back and that we can talk about this book. We buddy read Yellow Wife. Her name is Sadeqa, right? Johnson.
That's how I would pronounce it.
That's how I pronounce it too. And we Mr. Nika, I'm sorry if that's not the right way to pronounce your name. Please forgive us. But
Yes.
I'm super excited to dive into this book because I just feel like it was something.
It was. It really was.
It was
Yes.
something. So we don't really have to do the icebreakers this episode. We can really just spend our hour talking about our thoughts about the book. I found a few questions that we can kind of use to help us a little bit too. But then I'll give maybe just a brief overview of what the book is about, and then we can just talk about each of our experiences, and then maybe just deep dive into a in-depth conversation on what we think about it. That
Sounds good. Yeah.
All right, so I got my little iPad here because I find it. So Yellow Wife is once again, it's a book by Sadeqa Johnson. It has a couple different genres that it falls into, which is historical fiction, fiction, of course. It also falls into, African American fiction, books on race. She might, and I'm not wishing this upon her, but based off of how things are happening, she might end up on the banned book list at some point because the people be trying it.
Yeah, true.
So this is what the overview of the book, the description says. In the tradition of Wench and 12 Years a Slave, this harrowing story follows an enslaved woman forced to barter love and freedom while living in the most infamous slave jail in Virginia. Born on a plantation in Charles City, Virginia, Phoebe Brown was promised her freedom on her 18th birthday. But when her birthday finally comes around, instead of the idyllic life she was hoping for with her true love, she finds herself thrust into the bowels of slavery at the infamous Devil's Half Acre, a jail where slaves are broken, tortured, and sold every day. Forced to become the mistress of the brutal man who owns the jail, Phoebe faces the ultimate sacrifice to protect her heart in this powerful, thrilling story of one slave's fight to freedom. So that's the overview of it according to Goodreads. And I would agree with that. That's pretty much the full gist of the story. And I remember when we decided to buddy read, and I was like, girl, I'm thinking, oh, it's gonna take me a minute. I'm like, okay, yeah, I try to do like 5 or 6 chapters a week.
Yeah.
I got through with that book in 3 days. I was like, I remember inboxing you like, look, Ashley, I didn't read ahead, girl.
And see, I was trying to read slower because this was my second buddy read. And my first buddy read, the book wasn't all that good. So I was like, So this book, I was like, oh, I really hope it's living up to the hype that everybody was telling me about. So I was like, well, Ashley, try to read slow so you can go with your buddy read. And when you said you had read it like in 3 days, I was like, okay, good. So I was like, because I said this book is getting good. I was like, oh my gosh, I had to finish this story.
It was like, boy, I was like,
yes.
I was listening. So I did the audio, and I was like, this story, it just kept going. And I was like, this is so good. I can't stop listening. I'm trying to abide by this rule that I just said that we could do, but I'm like, this ain't gonna work. Let me just tell her I done read ahead because this getting good. And I felt like this was a book that I had to kind of like pull myself away from sometimes, because it just brings up a lot of emotions and feelings.
It does, yeah.
And then another reason was because like after I finished it, I felt like my dreams had become a little bit vivid, which I was like, let me get away from this. Because when you think about it, like even though I would say we've never experienced slavery, it's part of our story.
It is. And that's what touched me the most, because I was thinking, I was discussing the book with my aunt. She doesn't read, but like she's very into history. And I was telling her about the story, and I was like, and I said, and like after I read it, I said, I almost cried, because I was like, you think about like how our ancestors went through that to get us where we are today. I was like, you just think that so many women, like dealt with this stuff. And my grandmother, like I grew up in the South, I'm in South Carolina, and my great grandmother, you know, talks about how they picked cotton and talked about the different trials that they went through. And you take it for granted almost. Like after I read this book, I really sat back and reflected on myself and thought about how much I take for granted being a Black American, which we still face trials and stuff now. I said, but we take for granted what our ancestors done for us. And I was like, this book was like really needed for me to read it. And I'm tempted to just go ahead and read it again just because it was that good, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely worth reading a second time. And
Yeah.
I'm trying my best not to be a twice read person. As I get older, I'm finding myself doing that more and more. And I think it has something to do with me reading with audio. With the audio books, I think it doesn't feel as daunting to go back and read a book a second time.
Yeah.
I would definitely be interested in reading it again to see what I pick up the second time.
Yeah.
What I kind of like listened to the first time. And I ain't gonna lie, you know, a lot of people probably don't feel the way I felt, but Phoebe made me feel a way. And I was like, girl, you, and spoiler alert, because we're gonna be spoiling some stuff. So if you didn't read this book, that you go back and read it first before you listen to this podcast episode. I'm telling you now. But there was just some things throughout the story that Phoebe did that was just so frustrating to me.
Yeah.
I was like, do you realize that you is a slave, baby?
But see, I think, and I understand your frustration, but at the same time, I think the way she was raised, she really didn't think she was honestly a slave. You know what I mean? So I had to take that mindset, like the things she did too. I was like, girl, do you not know? And then I was like, but honestly, she may not know. Because I was like, the way her master and her mother kind of raised her to not have that slave mentality. But I feel like, you know, in the long run, it kind of hurt her in a lot of different areas. You know what I mean? Like, I understood your frustration. I was like, why she doing that? I was like, does she not know? And then I'm like, oh, dang, she may not really, you know what I mean? She may not really comprehend it.
Ashley, I appreciate you giving her that much credit, but I will not. Phoebe knew she was a slave. Phoebe's mom made her, you know, and that happens even today when we say you too high for your bridges or you think you're better than somebody.
Yeah, true. That's true.
And it happens with all of us because even for me as a Christian, and I'm gonna just talk about myself for a Christian, there's this thing called Christian elitism, right?
Yeah.
What it is that you think that because you're saved that you are somehow better than your neighbor in some kind of way, like, or there's different denominations within Christianity that feels like, oh, we're better than you, and they have these attitudes of elitism. Like, and in reality it really is just you have a whole lot of tradition at work going on at work at you that may be wrong or not right, you know, or not, and it's probably some of it is based in lies and stuff like that. You know, I ain't gonna go down that rabbit hole, but it's kind of what I felt like was happening. Phoebe, because she just felt like she was elite. And I to me, in the beginning of the book, it doesn't look like she was really a house slave. She was just more so, she kind of worked with some of the, you know, she worked with her mother, but she even became a house slave until she started actually having to the house. So it's like you are aware, aware, but her mom had her thinking, which some of that was beneficial to have her think like, you're not a slave in your mind, which you aren't. And I mean, that's very, very much so. I'm glad that she told her that, but should have caveated that with saying, you're not a slave in your mind, but this is your current reality. You need to live in this reality because you need to be smart. And I think that a lot of the things that happen with Phoebe is because she lacked one, accountability, and then she lacked common sense. It's like, and what she was having those issues with Mrs. Delphine. Her issues with Miss Delphine ain't really didn't have nothing. Let's just be her issues with Mrs. Delphine had to do with Miss Delphine was mad because her husband was sleeping with one of his slaves, which I don't know why they be acting like they wasn't doing that. Yeah, they was always doing it. But what are your thoughts about even that relationship, that tumultuous relationship that she had with Mrs. Delphine?
I kind of agree with you. Like, I really just feel like Miss Delphine was just angry. I feel like she had to know that Phoebe was her husband's child. And that's why he showed her so much favoritism. And I really hate that. But I mean, I feel as the wife, you know what your husband is doing, and you know some of the consequences of what your husband, I mean, pretty much she did know what her husband was doing, because she said in one part of the book, if my husband has his blank, then I'm gonna have mine too. When she was sleeping with Essex, and eventually got pregnant. So I just hate it, but I feel like Phoebe sometimes made the situations worse by the actions that she took. But then again, I was in her shoes, you know what I mean? Like, I can't say, oh, I wouldn't have did that. But at the same time, I'm like, dang, that's probably all she could really do in that situation. So it was very upsetting. It just, like I said, it just made me reflect again to think about all of what our ancestors went through. I'm just like, to put up with something like that, you know what I mean? Just to withstand physical abuse for no reason.
Yeah.
Just because you're mad that your husband fathered this child that you knew was going to happen, and then you're out there doing your dirt too. So I'm just like, what are you mad about, sis?
Yeah. And I mean, the baby was there. To be honest, Phoebe was there. If I read correctly, Phoebe was there before Miss Delphine even showed up, because his sister passed away. And I think that's after his sister passed away is when he got married.
It is.
If I remember the timeline correctly. So I think over time, what happened is she realized, like, oh, this is your child.
Yeah, that's true.
You're sleeping with this woman. This is your child. I don't know why y'all treated them like they are anything other than a slave. I think part of that comes with, she was just upset because of his affections towards not only her mother, but towards Phoebe. And like, I still don't make no excuses for the way that Miss Delphine treated her, because some of the things that she did to her was just egregious. And then she really, her character really frustrated me.
Me too, yeah.
In so many ways. And, I try to keep from cussing on him, but she frustrated me in so many ways. I think the craziest part for me was on the day that they were burying her mom, but I didn't put it past her, but on the day that they were burying her mom, she was like, I'm gonna let you celebrate for 2.5 seconds, but you got to go, sis. But also, like you said a little bit earlier, you said Phoebe kind of sometimes put herself in some crazy situations, which she kind of did, because it was going back to her mom not teaching her what the boundary is between her being Master's daughter and then her also reminding her that you're still a slave, like the property. These people don't care anything about you, and regardless of what this person who's your dad is pretending to act like he really, at the end of the day, you steal property to so that when Miss Delphine saw her out, her way out, like, oh yeah, and I'm gonna torture you and him in the same vein, in the same sentence. So I do think that was a little harsh, but at the same time, it's like it was to be expected, because like, sis, wow.
I was really shocked. Like, I felt like something was building up to happen when she allowed the funeral process to take place for her mother. I was like, you got something up your sleeve. I was like, you're too willing to let all of this go on after everything, like after you just delivered this child and, pretty much kill the child and all of that stuff. And that was a whole plot twist for me, because I was like, she really just walked in the river
now that
with this child.
Yeah,
I cried. I was like,
that hurt me.
I was like, how could you? And if I read correctly, her and the master had been trying for so long to have a child, and she could never, I think she continuously miscarried. And then for her, I just thought it was like very important in the story how she slept with Essex, and then this child she was able to carry the full term and deliver, and then to turn around and do that, I was like, God, I was like, that was just like a powerful point in the book to me, like, dang, like, you really did that. Like, you really just couldn't take what you've done, and you murdered this child. Like, I was like, dang.
Like, you could have sent it away. You could have.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, you could have did anything. You could have let somebody else raise it.
But that also goes back to how we talk about how men sometimes can be a little sensitive. Because I think now this is the only place that I would give Miss Delphine just a little bit. She a little, just a little empathy, because thinking about the times and her being a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and even though her husband was out here tipping and dipping and slipping with
Mm-hmm.
slaves, if she would have kept that baby and he would have realized that it was a black baby, he would have killed her and
He
that
would
baby.
have. Mm-hmm. He would
So
have.
I think that although it very much so hurted me, I think
Mm-hmm.
that Miss Delphine did her child a service
Yeah.
by not allowing her baby to be a slave.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's some of what, I guess that's some of the cognitive dissonance that they wanted us to see there.
Yeah.
And I also thought about that too. I thought about the fact that she couldn't carry to term a
Mm-hmm.
baby with her husband, but
Mm-hmm.
she could carry to term a baby with this slave.
Mm-hmm.
What that means, like,
Mm-hmm.
like what does that look like? Because it's not to say that her husband wasn't capable of
Yeah.
having children, because he had Phoebe.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's just like, why was it? What was going on between the stressors and the things that she was having, that she wasn't able to carry a baby to full term? And I'm wondering if the stress was coming in because she knew that her husband
Mm-hmm.
was out here with, I think Ruth was her name, was out here
I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
all the time, and that maybe was causing her to not be able to carry to term his children.
Mm-hmm.
But then
Mm-hmm.
she decided to be deceitfully wicked and go out here and start doing
Mm-hmm.
the thing. Then it was like, oh well, guess what? I'm gonna also curse you with, or have you with the burden of having this baby by your slave. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That what you? That's kind of what I think. I feel like that was the authors kind of playing on
I
that.
think so. Mm-hmm. But I like that she put that in there. Like it really, I was like, I was like, that was deep. I was like the whole river scene, and like to me, I kind of like, you know how like I know you said you were a Christian, you know, when you get baptized, it's kind of like a washing away of your sin. It kind of like reflected, that was like my interpretation, kind of like cleansing Miss Delphine of this of the, you know, I guess, you know, I would say the sin of having a child with a slave, you know, and putting them in the water and returning them, like, you know, killing them that way, kind of like a baptism. That's kind of how like I reflected it a little too. I was like, this part of the book was really deep. Like I had to reread it a few times just to kind of like grasp it for me, at least, because I was like, it was just so much. I feel like in that context, I was like, oh my God. I was like, the things. And then I don't know if you ever, I haven't fully read Toni Morrison's Beloved, but I know it's kind of like a piggyback off of that text, you know, how she killed her child so she wouldn't have to go through slavery. It kind of piggybacks off what you said. If Master really found out, he probably, like you said, would have killed her and the child anyway. So she probably did that child a service of just going ahead and taking care of it. But it was so sad.
Yeah, I think that yeah, I've read Beloved before. I
Mhm.
don't really intend on trying to read it again, but
No.
I thought about it, but I was like, nah, Tony, I'm gonna have to let this one ride. But yes, that's exactly what it is. But you know,
Mhm.
I also think that Sadeqa did us a favor, because it's very rare that you do see those stories come up where the women getting pregnant by their slaves.
Yeah.
Always get it from the space from the men, you know,
Mhm.
raping
Mhm.
and having sex with the women, but we
Mhm.
never really talk about that there was also another side to that, where these women was out here also producing and having sex and producing babies by the slave men as well.
Yeah. And see, that's what me and my aunt were talking about, because I was like, oh my God, like, I was like, I can't believe she did that. And my aunt was like, Ashley, she was like, we've talked about this before. She was like, you know, the women were out there doing this too. And I was like, maybe I said, because in history, you learn so much about the men. I said, they rarely talk about the women that were out here doing this. I said, so maybe I said it just brushed past my mind. She was like, Ashley, she was like, you knew this. She was like, you knew there was so much cross mingling with slaves. She was like, that's how you know, like, we have so many different races, so many, she was like, so many cousins. I was like, yeah, that's true. That's true. I was like, yeah, you got a point. I was like, you got a point.
I know why how my skin tone came into bloodline. Like, nobody's stupid. Like, try to talk about, we act like this isn't and I'm trying to stop saying like, I don't know why I'm saying like so much,
Yeah.
but like this is not something that doesn't show up. Like, I know why I became yellow. Like,
Yeah.
at some point there was a white man or a white woman
Yeah.
that entered into my bloodline and
Mhm.
this melanated color.
Mhm.
And if I trace my history back, I will find it. Like, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
I don't know why we always try to act like that ain't what it is. And
Yeah.
it always cracks me up, especially over the last of the 5 or 6 years, when these whole birthing conversations starts coming up and people taking the DNA test to try to prove that they are pure race. And it's like, baby, if you from America, you ain't pure nothing.
No.
Why you trying? Like, why you trying to prove that you're not?
At all.
Real mistake in your heart, your feelings finna get real hurt. You go take that DNA test and find out that you got all kind of people up in your blood.
Yes.
I don't know why folk be acting crazy.
I don't either. I was just like, oh my God. I was like, and then I was like, and to think that we still deal with this stuff, the racism today, I was like, do you not know? I was like, your cousin was probably sleeping with one of my cousins, and that's why you got your daughter to look light skinned. I was like, let's be real here. Like, come on, like, make it make sense.
It's just, I don't, girl, the people's nuts, but it really, it's really interesting. So I would assume that Phoebe, of course, was a light-skinned woman.
Yeah, very fair.
Based off of the character descriptions, I'm assuming that Phoebe was a light-skinned woman and that Essex was a dark-skinned man. And that even you would still be able to tell that the baby was Negro, because I think they described the baby's hair. She pushed it out and to indicate that, yeah, this is his child. I think that one thing that I will give credit for Phoebe for is her ability to plan. Yeah, I will give her credit for that. Even when she did make some dumb mistakes over here, she still worked her weight in gold when she was able to take people out. Like she saved Essex from death twice, basically. And I'm like, girl, how much love is in your heart, my God, today? Because listen, that second time, the second time though, towards the end, in my mind, I was like, leave. Go. Why are you saying? Like, I didn't expect her to say. I thought she was gonna go, but then I was like, girl, why? Why are you staying with them? But then, like, you know, she still had children. And I'm like, them kids don't belong to you. Just how bad they act and stuff like that. But you know, I have not become a mother yet, so I can't understand the concept of having to split yourself like that. Yeah. But just thinking about, especially the way her daughters were being raised. Yeah. It was just like, girl, leave them. Them kids will turn on you in a second or for their daddy.
Because at the end, you know, 2 of them passed as white. Yeah. And I was like, so I said, either way, I feel like they would have grown up fine without her. Like, there was no need. I feel like, now, like I said, I'm not a mother either. And I feel like I can understand the tornness, but you left your son, like you let your son go. So why could you not leave your daughter? I mean, you knew how they were being raised. You knew how they technically came into the world. I kind of consider what her and the master done as rape. I mean, to me, because I mean, it's really not like she was only doing it for survival in a sense. So I said, you know how these children will come about. So just go for your freedom. You know what I mean? That's how I felt when I was reading. I was like, girl, just go. Like, there's no need for you to stay. Like, let them kids live, they'll be fine. And I was like, maybe she should take them with her. But then I thought about their skin complexion too. And I said, it would just complicate them trying to get away more, because they would, if they saw all of them together, they would be like, who them white babies with you? Where y'all going? What are y'all doing? So I was like, I understood why she couldn't take them, but at the same time, I didn't understand why she just couldn't leave. I was like, I would just go. Like, here's your chance, sis. Go.
You know what I thought was interesting though? Because I think she had 4 girls by the jailer. But what I thought was interesting is that they kept continuing to have children, because, and I guess the part of the reason why they continue to have children is because Phoebe wasn't trying to pass. Because, you know, back in the day when people, and some people still pass in low key, but back in the day when they would be passing, they wouldn't have more than 1 or 2 children, because the fear of that heritage showing up, because if you don't show up in that first one, it's gonna definitely show up in that second one. And that's a guarantee, right? And so I think that it was interesting to me that they ended up having 4 girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the older 3 passed, and the baby was the one that said,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
"No, I ain't finna do that." And
Yeah.
and I understood her plot on that, because it was right towards that time when I think they weren't too far off from slavery and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then it was just like they couldn't really talk to their mom that often, because they couldn't run the risk
Yeah.
of being found out. I just, for me, when it comes back to just talking about her son, I think that, and I don't know if you feel the same way, I feel like Phoebe, of course, loved him much more than
Mm-hmm.
she loved those 4 girls. And she loved her girls.
Mm-hmm.
She literally was willing to stay for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the baby that she had with Essex was like her bread and butter. So
Yeah.
she wanted to, what's his name, Monroe or something like that?
It was Monroe. I believe, yeah, it was Monroe.
She wanted him to get out of there, so she was
Yeah.
willing to try to do whatever it took. Because all throughout the book, all you can see is her talking about trying to figure out a way to
Mm-hmm.
get her son where it is. But however, her son gave her one of the biggest reality checks
Mm-hmm.
that
He
I
really
thought
did.
he really needed, because she kept trying to make him believe that he was nothing more than a slave. And he like,
Mm-hmm.
this, I am out here in the field. This man has already sent me away
Yes.
because of the foolishness you got going on.
Mm-hmm.
I can die.
Yes.
Sell me.
Mm-hmm.
We are slaves. Stop trying to make me think that I'm something that I'm not. And it was just like, woo.
Yes, heartbreaking.
Yeah, it reminds you of them times when you kind of had them tough conversations with your parents.
Yeah.
And he was just like, stop trying to make me think that I'm something other than a slave. I am a slave.
Yes.
What did you feel? How did you feel about that? I thought that moment was like, woo.
It
Yeah.
spoke volumes, because I feel like that's the same conversation her mother really should have had with her. Like you said, piggybacking off what you're saying, like in your mind, you are free, but just remember, this is the nature of the situation. And I feel like Monroe really understood that, because he was forced into the field. I mean, he was forced to do the work as a slave. So he was like, Mom, I hear what you're saying, but he was like, let's be real. This is the reality of the situation. You're not out here in this field like I am. You're not threatened to be sold off like I am. So let's be real. Just quit, cut the BS. Like this is what it is. And I just felt like it was just so heartbreaking. I felt like that it had to come from her child to realize that her son had to go through all of that for her to realize, like, oh my God, like we really, I don't know if she fully set in her mind that she was a slave, but I feel like it opened her eyes some to the situation that my son may never can get out of this. You know what I mean? Like he's still at risk for being sold, going to another plantation, all the things that you fear as a slave woman, you know, especially during that time, because so many people were being separated from their families and stuff. But it was just heartbreaking to read that part, and for it to come from a child. I don't know how old he was, I can't remember, but I feel like he was a young age. And I said, for him to be such a young age and to understand that is crazy. And she couldn't comprehend it.
Yeah, girl, I was like, woo, I was so happy. I said, thank you, Monroe. Your mama, she making some crazy decisions. And then this is the part where that accountability word that I said I care about for her comes in, because the reason why he got took off in the first place was because you weren't thinking. Why would you trust this white woman? You know she don't like you. She didn't even want to dress you in the first place, and then you gonna trust her to
Sis, but let's talk about that for a minute, because when she gave that woman that money, I was like, I said, girl, you know you about to get killed. I was like, that man about to beat you. I was like, because you know, when that woman do not like you, she do not coming over here dressing your children, nothing about you, and you gonna trust her? I was like, her of all people. In my mind, I was like, why could you not just go into town yourself? I was like, they know you, like they know who you are, like you've been going in and out of town anyway as the jailer's wife or yellow wife. So why not just go do it yourself? I was like,
that's what I didn't understand. First off, I was so mad. I ain't gonna hold you. A couple cuss words. I was so mad with Phoebe. I
Yeah.
said, you fool. Why would you?
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
I would have thought that she would have trusted one of the people's wives quicker
Yeah.
than she tried to trust that dressmaker.
Yeah.
When that woman asked you, did he know what you was doing? You should have known right then. That should have gave you a clue. That's why I said sometimes she just didn't use common sense.
Yeah.
When she asked you whether or not he knew what you was sending out, you that should have gave you a clue right then and there.
Yep.
Don't trust
Don't do
this.
it. Don't do it.
Don't do what you about to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that woman took her, didn't even give her the money back, took her money.
Yep.
And went straight to her slave master
Mm-hmm.
and gave him that note.
Yep.
And she's sitting there in the house looking crazy for however long. I think it was like a week or whatever, not wanting to bathe herself and always me, and she want to blame Essex for it. And I'm like, no, that was your foolishness.
That's what I said.
You cannot blame that man. Yes, he asked you to do it, but he didn't tell you be stupid about it.
Okay. And then I was like, you risk your child being sold. I was like, for your stupidity. I was like, why would you just willingly trust this white woman that don't like you? Like, I just couldn't understand. I was like, why would you trust her of all people?
Yeah, because that's where that thing comes in with her mom not teaching her.
Yeah.
Baby, you still a slave. And,
and
she figured, it was almost like she figured she could trust white people.
Yes.
And it's just like, no, baby, just because you sitting up in this house and you popping out these babies for this man, but you're still his property. And you would think, just based off of the relationship with the jailer, you would think that she wouldn't want to even run that type of risk in the first place. Because if emotional manipulation was a person,
it was him.
PC jailer. Because that man literally only wanted her, he really only wanted her for sex. Every now and then he pretended like he loved her, for her. But the moment that she told that line or stepped out of line, you're my property.
Yep.
That and the third to you. And I was like, girl, if this ain't Stockholm syndrome or whatever this is, like, you should know that after twice of him doing this to you, you should have, like, at some point you would think she would have got a clue. And she would think it was just time after time after time. And I was just like, are you never gonna learn?
That's how I felt. I was like, are you not gonna learn at all, like, from your past mistakes? Like, come on, sis, like, really. But like you said, it was her mom not instilling, because in those times, that's one of the things that they push. Do not trust the white man. Like, do not trust them at all. And it's just horrible. Like, I just couldn't, when I read that, I was like, oh my God, I really cannot believe that she really gave this letter to her.
Yeah, that was
all people.
That was the part of the book that just really infuriated me.
Yeah, me too.
That was the part that, like, I was just like, this is dumb. Like,
dumb. That's what I said. You just dumb. I was like, dumb, stupid. Why would you do that? Why would you give it to her? And she had that one other friend, because like they had couples that were yellow wives as well. I was like, why not give it to her? Like, why not have her?
That's exactly what I was thinking, because I think in the end, towards the end, one of them women is who she went to.
She is.
Set up the plan. That's why I was like, why would you not? Why? Like, why would you not do this? And girl, listen, like I said, Phoebe wore me out at that part of the book. And I was like, I can't think. And so then let's kind of talk about the children in the book. So let's really talk about, we already kind of talked about one of them, which is the one that Mrs. Delphine had that she killed. They don't really get much in the story. But let's talk about her relationship with her daughters and the way that they were being raised and the way that they acted. And it was just like, it's not a far-fetched idea to see that those older three, particularly definitely those older two, would want to pass, because the way that they thought and and also it was a scene in the book where it really shows you that children really do what they see, not just what you say. They don't do it, they do as you do, not as you say. And when they were playing slave, playing like putting the slaves on the auction block and stuff.
Yeah.
That was just fun to them. To them, that was innocence because that's what they saw all the
Yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
I was so frustrated, but it was like, what did you expect? How else did you expect them to come up with something? Like this is what they see. This is their normal. And but her frustrations with her daughters about it was kind of hypocritical a little
That's
bit.
how I feel. I was like, Phoebe, you being a hypocrite. I was like, how can you be mad at your children for mimicking what they see? Because that's all they know. If you would have told them and educated them on who they really were, I said you couldn't be mad, like you wouldn't be mad at their actions. I mean, them playing auction, that's like you said, that's all they knew. That's what their father's job was, to auction off these slaves. I said, if she was honest with her children and said, you know what, your mommy is a slave. Did you know that? Like just break it down, be real, because that's the realness of the situation,
Exactly. And this is she never took accountability for that. Like she never took the time to tell them who they were, and all they knew is that they were, the jailer's children, and they didn't know that their mom was also a slave, and they probably didn't find out until they got set free. They were actually slaves. And then she got upset with, I think she got upset with her daughter saying the N word, and she got upset with some other stuff that she had said or done. The older, and I was just like, that's kind of how y'all raised her. Y'all raised her spoiled and entitled, and to look at these other people as they mean nothing. So it's like, why did you expect her to be anything other than what you've already trained and taught her to be? That was so funny to me. But yeah, I was just like, you've been very hypocritical. How you
That's
gonna
how I feel.
at these kids? Don't be talking about your anger on them. They ain't do it. You did it.
Exactly.
Oh, but I did feel bad because I think the most hurtful, and I think once again, this is a space that I kind of shed a thug tear to, was when is her name June or July? July. When July got sold.
Yes.
I was devastated.
I was too. I cried. I was like, oh my God. But at the same time, it was all because the actions of Phoebe. I said it was Phoebe's fault and she has such an attachment to her children. And it just, like I said, it should have just been a reminder to Phoebe that, like you said, you are a slave, you are his property. At any time, this can happen to you. You know what I mean? Or your son. It almost happened to your son already, but it just broke my heart because I was like, she didn't understand why this was happening. Like July didn't understand why this was happening to her, why Master all of a sudden just wanted to sell her off. And it was all because of Phoebe.
And she couldn't tell her, and she refused to tell her why.
Yeah. And I was like, all because of your attachment to Essex. And I was like, sis, I understand, like, this is the first love of your life. Like, y'all have a child together. But at the same time, you're willing to risk so many other factors for this one man. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I know love is a strong thing, but like, you're really risking it all out here for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she was really to be a whole fool for him.
Yeah.
A fool and a half. And then go have a nerd to get upset. Like, girl, is you crazy? Yes. You ain't seen this man in years. You ain't seen him in years. Like you said, I understand that you in love with him, that y'all got a child together.
Yeah.
But baby, you got other kids. You got other things you need to think
exactly.
About
exactly.
He can't just walk up in here and now be like, oh, I love you, I miss you. Can you help me escape? Excuse me? Again? Like, bruh, I helped you escape the first time.
I was like, it's not my fault you got caught up the second time. Let's be real. Like, I don't know what you was up there doing.
Out there acting a fool.
Yeah.
I mean, true, he was being an abolitionist in some kind of way, but he was out there asking for it.
Yeah. And I was like, you already escaped once. Like, you should have laid low, like they said, and left it alone. But
no, you won't be out here to be radicalized, and then you didn't got set up here and got caught, and now they done brung you back, and then I'm supposed to be responsible, which talks about the burden that comes on Black women. Yes. Like, now I'm supposed to be responsible to carry the weight and make sure that everybody's good. Meanwhile, she's neglecting herself and neglecting what would be beneficial and best for her. It's like, we shouldn't have to constantly always go through pain to get love and know what real love is and know what that looks like, and to be able to receive that. And like I said, although I feel like Phoebe did some very bad things, I will say that she really was heavily in survival mode. Like, and it was like boom, boom, boom. Every time she turned, it was like there was no break. And it goes back to talking about even like the modern day books by Janie Allen, like Black women must die exhausted. And it's just like she had to be tired.
Yes.
Carry all those burdens, but it's like at some point you do have to make a decision. Like, is he really worth all of these risks that you're taking? And at points in the book, I'm like, he ain't worth these risks that you're doing. Like, it's not worth it. Especially once her son was about to get taken.
Exactly.
I would have thought at that point she would have been like, yeah, bro,
it's a wrap. Like, you done. I'm sorry. Like, this is the nature of the situation. I'm sorry.
Like, it is what it is. But she was just like, no, I'm gonna keep trying. And I was just like, come on.
But I do think I had to look back on the part of the book where Essex was beat and how badly he was beat. And I said, I don't know, like, of course, we don't really know how it is to feel that, to see that happen, especially to someone that we love and truly care about. So I said, I can only think of the trauma and the pain that it caused her to see the jailer do that to Essex. So I said, maybe that was some of the drive and some of the reason, like an extra push behind why she did what she did. Because, I mean, I can only imagine watching that, especially with someone that I shared a child with that I loved. I was like, God, would I risk it all to make sure that man doesn't go through? But like you said, that's another thing that a Black woman carries. Like, dang, do I risk it all to make sure that this man that I love doesn't go through that again? Like, do I carry that burden for him because I love him that much? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know though. I was like, that's risking everything. I was like, he kind of brought it on himself a little bit too. So I was like, but I call that as a little flip point. I was like, maybe she feels that's why she did what she did.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that is the person that she truly loved. The jailer was a person that she was trying to survive.
Yeah.
What pissed me off about him is he had the audacity and the nerve to be jealous.
Yeah.
You had how you gonna have the nerve to be jealous? You literally, I'm your slave. You are raping me. I have no choice but to be here with you. You got the audacity to ask me if I love this man. And you got the nerve to be insecure as if you don't hold all the power in your hand.
And then, he had another woman on the side too. And I was like, now, I know you're not trying to be jealous and you got a whole nother girl in the house that you done had a kid with, like, and you jealous of me in my situation?
Brought this woman up in this house because you was mad at me. And so you started having sex with her and started having got a baby, got her knocked up. And I'm supposed to I can't say nothing about that. I can't say about how I feel, how that makes me feel. You've been sitting here using and abusing me all this time. Yeah. And then you got the audacity to sit here and have the nerve to be jealous of the fact that I care about this man and not care. And then she had to, I appreciate that she was smart in that moment and didn't use her smart mouth to be like, yes, I do love him and what you gonna do about it? Yeah. That she was just like, no, I felt like it was at that point where she kind of started to kind of get a little smart to a wit to her because of the fact that she was trying to get her child back or find out what was happening. And I also thought that it was very interesting the type of society that they was in, where multiple of these men had these yellow wives. And it was like, it was one of those things where people knew. People knew that these folks was dating and marrying slaves. And then they was kind of like not saying anything about it. They were just kind of letting it slide on the floor. But then when he goes to visit and that woman, the white woman was like, she not sleeping in my house. And that was the first time where you really get back into this reality of, oh, I'm a slave. Y'all slave, you're dirty. Because it seemed like they were running in circles where that type of moving around was okay. And so what was your thoughts when we got back to that scene where that woman was like, I don't want this woman in my house. I don't want her sleeping in my house and stuff like that. And then her husband was like, that they're our guests or whatever. How did you feel about that?
It was just very crazy to me because I was like you said, it's just kind of like a slap back into reality. I feel like for Phoebe, like, hey, like, you're really not this man's wife. Like, you're this man's property, and he's just parading you around as a wife figure. And I think it said in the book, the reason, because I was just wondering, I was like, why is the jailer not married himself? Like, why does he not have, a physical wife? And it was saying that, I think if I remember correctly, that his profession was looked down upon, and that many women didn't want to be attached with someone of his caliber. But then, so I'm like, oh, so then he just gets a slave wife, and like everything just kind of like smooths over, and it's like,
right.
we kind of like look around it.
Exactly. I think part of it, and one of the reasons why he liked her and wanted her is because he liked the fire that was in her, because she was like, I'm not taking my clothes off. And I was like, I don't blame you, sis. I'm like, you were definitely running the risk of getting killed, but it was at that moment she was like, well, you're gonna have to kill me because I'm not taking my clothes off. I'm not stripping down. And so I do appreciate that she did like want to keep her dignity. She wanted to have some type of wits about herself, like, no, but it goes back to that mindset of that thought process of her mom telling her, oh, well, you're not a slave. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, you are going to treat me like a basic human being. And I was so scared for her in that moment, but I also was like, yes, Phoebe, tell her, I'm not taking off nothing. I'm not taking down nothing. And I was just like, girl, you about to get it. They finna.
That's what I thought. I said, girl, you just don't know. I was like, they about to strip you down and take you out right here. I was like, but like I said, I was glad that she stood up for herself. I was like, girl, you just don't know what you did. I was like, they about to take you out, sis. They about to take you out. And then he was like, out by her. I was like, oh. I was like, well, that was a strange turn of events.
Right. And I'm kind of, and I don't want to reintroduce this too much into the conversation, but it kind of brings about the conversation of, is it because she was a light-skinned, Black woman that they were is it because she was a light-skinned Black woman that they were very much so more open to her resistance than if she was a dark-skinned slave?
I honestly think that, and I hate to say that, but when I thought about that, I said, if she was of a darker tone, I don't think it would have went the way it did. I think that she would have got a negative outcome if she was a darker tone. And I hate to say, but I honestly feel that way. Like, because another thing I thought about too, I said, he felt like her complexion could probably pass a little bit. I feel like she was a very fair tone. So if he took her out, she probably could pass like to the naked eye to someone that wouldn't really, that didn't know ethnic features as white. So that's another reason why I felt like he was like, oh, I'm gonna get her. Like, don't worry about it. Like, let me take her.
Yeah, I did look up like the actual people, because they tell you that it's based off of an actual place in these people.
Yeah.
So I looked it up, and she was pretty fair skinned.
Okay.
He could have probably passed as a white woman. Now, I of course would have known, and other Black people known that she, that she was what she was. But there is definitely moments where I felt like, I think that might have been Sadeqa's point to show that part where if she wasn't the skin tone she was, if she wasn't who she was, she never would have gotten away with a lot of the things that she got away with. Because in fact, like the whole thing with Essex, if a dark-skinned woman would have did the things that they did, like first off, if she was dark-skinned, that woman would have never came at all to dress them, period. And then also, if it was a dark-skinned woman put in this position to do that, her kid would have been sold before the next sunrise. You know what I'm saying? Or matter of fact, they might have would have went the whole extreme way and just killed him. Then finished killing off Essex without even a thought. You know what I'm saying? And it does bring back up those old hurts and pains of how being a dark-skinned woman, how that is even a slight against. Because of the melanin that's in your skin. And it's so unfortunate. And there was a quote, and I saw this in a part of a question, and I'm going to ask you about it. And I got I'm not going to finish the whole thing, but It's from bookclubs.com. And there was a thing that Phoebe says. She says, Mama always said the way to keep peace with white folks was to be available and invisible at the same time. And the question is, how does this resonate with the modern times, and what are the current social political implications of this? So she said, Mama always said that the way to keep peace with white folks was to be available and invisible at the same time. I thought that was a powerful quote because
It was.
true.
It is.
So what are your thoughts on even as it relates to the book, but then even now as that quote relates to what we're dealing with in society now?
Yeah, like I said, this book was really like a reflection, and it made me think about, be thankful for everything that my ancestors went through. But at the same time, when I read that quote, I was like, to be honest, I said, we're still dealing with some of that today. I'm a brown skinned woman, and I feel like in most of the fields that I am in, or like places I'm around, I'm the only Black person. And you never want to get quoted or claimed as the angry Black female, or the person, the Black woman with the issue. So most of the time you are silent and you don't say anything until you're asked of something. And if you feel like you bring an issue up, you're being labeled. And I hate that it's still like that today. I hate that. And like I live in the South, and it's a big thing down here. I mean, I hate to say, but racism is huge down here. I mean, we're fighting a fight every day. Even the neighborhood I live in, me and my husband are probably the only Black people that live in this neighborhood. And a comment was made that we had some family visiting, and a neighbor was like, oh, we thought that they couldn't afford the house anymore and that you guys were taking over. And I was like, why would you fit? So I'm just like, we don't say anything. We don't cause any disruption. Why would you just assume that because me and my husband look young, that we could not afford to live in the same neighborhood as you and your husband? You know what I mean? So it's stuff like that we're constant. So this book, I was like, oh, this is stuff that they dealt with, like my ancestors. But then I think about it, after I thought about that comment, I said, this is stuff that I'm still dealing with today. I have to fight to prove that I belong where I am, And I hate that it's still like that. I mean, it bothers me to my core. And people are like, why don't you move to a more diverse area? Why should I have to uproot my life to make other people more comfortable? You know what I mean? I like this neighborhood. I love living here. Why should I leave? Why can I not keep my presence here? Why is that?
I have the right to stay, to live, and to be whoever,
exactly,
wherever, and whenever I want to.
Exactly.
That is a part of my inalienable rights.
Exactly.
I'm a state citizen. So wherever I go, wherever I want to put my foot down, and I'm gonna be there. I'm not moving an inch. You don't tell, you can't, and that's part of what like infuriates me. And I'm a person that I am more the person that will speak up at work. Some things I have to be very careful about. You have to be mindful because people are sensitive.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm gonna say what I got to say.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, you white, I know I'm Black. Okay, we got that out the way. Yeah. Let's have a human conversation.
Yeah.
Because what we ain't gonna do, just human injustice in general, we're not going to do that. You're not gonna talk to me crazy. You're not gonna act crazy, because if you want respect, you gotta give it. But exactly. Too often, I like, even in my new position, there was a thing that happened this past week where I kind of felt the way, and I had to adjust myself. I was like, maybe, and you always want to make excuses for other people. Yeah, you do. And it's just like, sometimes you have to know that this is intentional. Yeah. It's on purpose, because this is now becoming a pattern. So it's like, how do I go about addressing what's not the pattern, and how do we go about fixing this? Because this is a problem. Yeah. I'm a Black woman who replaced an older white woman who was in my position. So that lady was in this position for over 10 years. And being new on the block, even though I've worked there before as an intern, but being the new kid on the block, you have that. Then it can't help but feel like, is it also some of the things that you're doing, even though I don't think it's intentional or you're aware of it, are you doing some of these things because I'm a Black woman? Like, would you have done this to my successor this way? You know what I'm saying? And so I have to also check my own feelings and emotions and check in with myself, because I love where I work and I love what I do, but you do have those little microaggressive things that pop up, and it's just like I'm never going to play invisible. That's what I'm not. But I'm also just going to be cautious and mindful of where I am in the audience that I have.
Yeah.
You don't want to be labeled as the angry Black woman. Because that's not, you ain't gonna get nothing done.
No, at all. And see, that's another, and like I understood like the quote, like, you know, being invisible. Like I want my presence to be known, but at the same time, like I feel like as a Black woman, I have to pick and choose my battles sometimes. Yeah. I feel like it's not me being invisible. It's just sometimes you know when you need to address a situation, and sometimes you like, look, I'm gonna let this one slide this one time because I already know it's gonna be a bigger issue if I bring it up now, but let it happen again. Like, we're gonna have a problem. I'm gonna bring it up that second time, you know? So you kind of have, and I hate that we have to juggle like that, but I mean, like I said, growing up in the South, it's a constant battle, like, especially I should say the rural South. I shouldn't say just, because I don't know where you live at, Bree, I'm sorry. But in the rural South, a lot of times you are the only Black person in a crowd of white people. And you have to learn to do, well, you know, I quit doing the code switch. I'm gonna be me. Like, this is it. Like, when I grew up, I would code switch so much because, like I said, if you talk a certain way, your teacher would be like, oh, don't talk like that. That's not proper. Or don't say that because that's not grammarly enough. Like, you need to carry yourself a certain way. And then as I got older, I'm like, no, you just want me to conform to who you think I should be. And I can't do that any longer. Like, this is who I am. This is the situation. Like, I'm no longer going to conform to what you think I should be. But it's so hard here sometimes. Like,
I lived
to navigate that.
I lived in Virginia for 4 years.
Oh, so you know, yeah.
And I'm from Southern Illinois, so I'm right at the border of St. Louis and I'm from East St. Louis, Illinois. I'm right at the border of St. Louis, Missouri. Missouri is the last state to abolish slavery. So I am very aware of what Southern life and Southern culture is like.
Yeah.
I come from a place where there are sundown towns that used to be active around my birth city, my home. Yeah. And they're not, I don't know if they're particularly sundown towns anymore, but we are very aware of them, and we try our best not to be in those areas at night because you never know. So I know what rural life looks like. But I stayed in Virginia for the last 4 years, and I stayed in Northern Virginia, but it's every day, or when I would go on my walks and stuff, I would have these thoughts about, like, at some point this used to be slave land, like places where people actually, you know, ran the fields, because they're in some of the places that I walked, there were still actively cotton plants, you know. And so you have to think about that. But the South is definitely different. Like right now, there's legislation literally on the ballot for certain states about abolishing slavery. Still there's on the of abolishing slavery in jail systems and stuff. Like, what?
We're in 2022 and we're still.
Are you kidding me? Why is it still a thing?
Yes,
it's still a thing. And so it is very frustrating.
Very.
Sometimes be Black in America. We are still very much so fortunate because compared to our ancestors who have gone away, even during the Civil Rights Union movement and all of that, compared to my ancestors, God, I am grateful for my life. But there are still so many tough battles because now it's more covert. It's over. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Read through it. Because it's so heavily ingrained in people that they don't realize, like, this is a problem. Because they've been living their life that way for so long. When you call them on it, they like, oh, I'm offended because now I have to change or adjust and be more attuned to, like, if you want me to be sensitive to you and how you feel, then yes, you do need to adjust yourself. And
exactly.
It shouldn't have took to a whole world to shut down for y'all to realize that you have a diversity issue. You knew before the world shut down that there was a diversity issue. So, like, stop playing with me. You know what I'm saying? And being a part of being into this new job in this organization, you you kind of like, I'm aware that I was probably a diversity hire, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because if that means that I need to come in and be able to evoke change in some kind of way, or if I can contribute to the table, then absolutely, I'm gonna come with my full self, and like, I'm not gonna be code switching. I'm not gonna be doing this is who I am. This is me.
Exactly.
How you take it, how you can take it, and leave it there. So whatever you feel like you need to do, but I'm gonna show up full force.
Exactly.
And it's so unfortunate that, like you said, that we have to do those things, but it's just like, are we still constantly living in survival mode? So I just got through reading this book, this memoir about complex PTSD, which is not even them. But when you think about it, it's like, yes, Black people, people of color have been living for years with complex PTSD. And we're still trying to figure out how to navigate out of those spaces. Girl, it's just so much. But with Phoebe, I felt like, and this is why these types of stories are necessary, because you get to see the implications, and why banning books is so frustrating to me, because it forces people to stay in ignorance about situations and things that are happening in the world. And I'm just like, y'all got to stop. Like, you can no longer feign ignorance, because you got Google at your fingertips. You have all these different books and thought leaders and people that you can listen to and understand what's happening in the world. So there is no excuse for you to still be an idiot.
It's none. It's none. It's none at all. I mean, and it's just like I said, just to piggyback off what you said, it's just frustrating that we still have to. I know a big T-shirt that I've seen a lot when Black Lives Matter, the movement first started. I am my ancestors' wildest dream. And I thought about that after reading this book. I said, to be honest, I was like, we really are, like, even though we're still fighting some of these struggles, I was like my great grandmother would say to me, she was like, I'm so like glad of how far we've come. I could take my grandmother down a path in South Carolina, and she was like, we picked cotton right there. Oh, we picked cotton right there. And I'm like, really? And she was like, yeah, we picked cotton down the street. And like, she's pointing all these areas out, and I'm just thinking like, man, like, we're literally just driving down the road right now. And my great grandmother, she picked cotton on the side of these streets for a far white man, like to be sold. Like, it's unfathomable. But I'm just like, and to think that we're still fighting this racism today. Like, I have patients call me the N-word, and I'm just like, why? I'm literally here to take care of you. Like, this is my job. Like, I'm getting paid to do this.
You care. I have to take care of you and make sure that you don't die. And you have the audacity to call me the N-word.
Exactly. And I'm just like, or they don't want a Black nurse to care for them. Oh, are you my nurse? And I'm like, now you see on my badge it says nurse. Like, I literally wear a bigger badge so you can see that I'm the nurse. Or they'll come in, are you with housekeeping?
Baby, ooh.
Nothing against housekeeping, nothing against them.
Ooh.
Nothing at all. But it's the microaggressions that we deal with. And I'm just like, now I done gave you pills 3 or 4 times today. And the family, or a family member like, oh, are you with housekeeping? I'm like, now I know you see the nurse on my badge right here. Like, I know you see it.
Wait,
I have it extra big so you can see it, so this confusion won't happen. And I'm like, no, I'm the nurse. Like, let's be real here. And that's what I tell my grandma. And she said, baby, it's stuff that we dealt with. Like, she said, we dealt with it worse back then. She was like, you're just getting a little taste of it now. She was like, unfortunately, she was like, that's the world we live in. And I'm just like, come on.
And that's crazy, because that shouldn't be the world.
It really shouldn't be the world we live in. Like, I shouldn't have to explain to my child to not go out, to be fearful when he goes out the door, to know how to talk to police officers, you know what I'm saying? To be fearful when he walks in our neighborhood that somebody might question why he's there, even though we live there. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be like this,
And so, girl, because we'll be here all day.
I know, yeah, we will.
Wrap it up. We're gonna wrap it up, but it's just like, my overall thoughts for the book was that it was well written. It was like, she created characters that had something. This is why it's important for people like us, for Black artists, for BIPOC artists, to get book deals, so that we can tell our stories,
Mm-hmm.
because she did an excellent job of telling this story in a way that made you not only angry sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
it made you really feel these characters. And it
Mm-hmm.
was such a good read that you couldn't, I literally couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
So I definitely think overall, Sadeqa did an amazing job of like
Mm-hmm.
taking a piece of history and then and then building a story around it.
Yes,
And I think that was just so, it was beautifully done.
it was.
This is one of the times where Bookstagram got it right.
Okay, that's what I said. I was like, okay, Boostergram got it right with this one. I was so thankful. I was like, it was I feel like it was a very much needed read for myself. Like I said, because I spoke with my grandmother and my aunts after, and I was just like, I said, this story, I said, we need more of this because they don't teach, at least where I went to school, they don't teach stuff like this.
No.
I even took a Black history course and stuff like this was not brought up. I was like, children need to know their history. I said, they need to know these things and how stuff was going on back then in order to help them navigate better now.
Yeah, we need to be able to tell our stories, and we need to be able to be exposed to our stories so we know thoroughly what our history is, and then we can have conversations to talk about it. Like, I love the fact that you said after you read the book you went and talked to your grandmothers and you went and talked to your aunts about it. And I think that that's the point, is to create conversation, to find out what was happening, to talk about people's lives and generational, because this was a generational story. And to talk about generations and how the implications of those generations as they navigated through slavery and the South, and which we're still kind of navigating through right now. But it has been a wonderful hour, girl.
Yes.
It is always a pleasure talking to you.
Same.
It was a wonderful hour. I thank you so much for inviting me to do a buddy read with you for this book.
Yes.
We have to do another one at some point because this one was good. So we're gonna have to find another good one.
Yes.
And so if you have any last thoughts that you might want to share with anybody, and then we'll close it on out.
My last thoughts, read this book. That's about, like, read this book. It's beautifully written. It's a very important story for our culture. And I'm just appreciative of everything that our ancestors went through. Like, even though we're still dealing with stuff today, I'm very appreciative of everything that they went through to get us here, to get me in this seat, to get me in this neighborhood, So I'm very appreciative. Like, that's what the story did for me. It just made me reflect and be thankful for everything that my family has went through to get me where I am today.
Yes, me too. Like, yes, read the story, y'all.
Yes.
You didn't pay for it or nothing like that, but read it. It's worth it. It's worth picking up, and it's worth having conversations about. And once again, like I said, Sadeqa, we thank you so much for taking the time out to write this. I understand how difficult it had to be to do the research and everything that it took behind just writing this body of fiction, but we're so grateful that you decided to tell the story. It has been, like I said, a lovely hour, y'all. I thank you so much for listening to the podcast, for being a part of the Stories with Bree community, and I'll catch you back here next week.